thank you everyone for joining us today. Really happy to be on here with Kyle and Bede from ModularWalls. We are recording this to be shared later because it will be early in the morning Australia time. So this is better for everyone. So thank you. But welcome. I'm glad everyone's watching. My name is Matt Brown. I'm a product manager here at Skuid. I get to work with the Skuid product and get to listen to y'all and how you're using it to try and make it better. And I'm joined by a couple other folks. Chris, welcome. What do you do here at Skuid?
Yeah, I'm a pre-sales engineer here at Skuid, and so I get to work with the product and with prospects as well as some customers, just in lining up the types of solutions that they're trying to build and dream about, and making sure that Skuid can deliver on those and show them how some of that ideation can take place. So excited to get into this one because this app is really cool. So this will be fun.
Yeah, and for those watching, Chris is a huge design nerd. We geek out together on a few webinars on the Skuid channel, which you should check out. So we're going to have a good time doing just that today. And then we're also joined by Kyle and Bede at ModularWalls. Kyle, Bede, welcome. Can you tell us a little about your company and what you guys do?
So ModularWalls is an innovator in the fencing and walling space. So the founder decided that as a replacement to traditional methods of construction, which is usually going to be bricks or timber, that he wanted a more modern construction method, and that is the birth of the modular wall. We could go into more depth about the details of how the material construction and all that works, but essentially over the last 20 years, the company's gone from a one-person band to how many employees does Modular have now, Bede? 60, 70?
Yeah, 60 to 70.
Yeah, and we do everything from homeowners to big giant commercial jobs and industrial jobs, roadways and mining sites and stuff like that now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to spend some time getting into the app that is currently public and available on the ModularWalls website, which is really cool, and I'm really excited to do that. Before we do, I want to set the tone and just give a quick overview of what we're going to be getting into today. The topic at hand is Salesforce Communities and Sites, which they've just recently rebranded to be the Experience Cloud. So if you need to set up a partner community, a user community, or a public-facing site, you're going to do it through the Experience Cloud using their Experience Builder. So really excited to get into that today. And we're going to specifically be talking about some ways to build processes. And we're going to look at a self-quoting process at ModularWalls. And yeah, we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty of that. But before we actually do that, I want to give some context as to what Skuid is and how we're going to do that. So Chris, do you want to share your screen and show us the Skuid tool real quick before we go?
All right, absolutely. Go ahead, Matt. Tee it up.
Yeah. So we're looking at the Skuid Composer here. And Chris, do you want to walk us through what you do whenever you create a page in Salesforce using Skuid?
Yep, absolutely. And keep me honest on time here, because this will get distracting to just start building.
You can get in the zone sometimes.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Totally. Anyone can building Skuid.
Yeah, so up here, let me just open this top panel up. These are all the Skuid components. And so this is how you present data in the UI. And so we'll see later on the demo, like a lot of different components that ModularWalls is using really creatively in the way that they're stepping their users through their particular process. But the components are nothing without data or places to fill out data. And the way that we bring data into a page is through Skuid models. And without getting too much in the weeds, a Skuid model is essentially a configured query in Salesforce. So for example, I'll just call this one accounts. And now I just point it to my custom or standard object that's sitting in my Salesforce org. So I'll just type ahead for account. There's some additional properties I can configure here, like with regards to how many records comes back or if it's queried on page load and things like that. But for now, I'll just step over into the fields. And now I'm seeing, it's actually a really nice kind of meta view of this object because I can see all the custom and standard fields that are on my object. And then I can just make some selections in terms of what I want to bring back for my particular app. So maybe the name, the industry, and let's grab employees for now. And so this is me configuring a query. And what's really cool about Skuid is that you can add as many models as you want. And so, for example, this model could look to another object, again, customer standard. And so you can start to create these really rich experiences where it doesn't really matter how far away the objects are from each other in Salesforce. You can present all of that data in kind of a single experience for a user and just make it really easy for them to see the data they need when and where they need to see it.
Right. So folks that have been in Salesforce for a while might be used to the object page structure. I've got an object and I've got a list page and I've got a detail page for that object. What Skuid lets us do is get as many objects as we need, as many different records as we need into a single page, a single experience. Okay, so you got your data layer here, and then how do I show that data?
Yep. So that's in the components, and there is a quick create capability on our models where if I double click a model, it'll let me choose, do I want to create a form or a table with the fields that I brought into my model?
That's great.
So I'll just choose a table. And now I've got a table on this page. There's my fields. Maybe I don't want to see the record type ID, and I'd rather have, industry be a little bit over here on the right. And because I'm picky about how this is going to look, I'm just going to throw a responsive grid down in the canvas. This is really good for laying out experiences, taking control over the white space of your page. And there's some properties that I can adjust here just to give this a little bit more space on the sides. And I'm going to add some margin at the top. And then I'm done, Matt. I promise I won't.
All right. Okay, cool.
So
you got the pointer. Can you hit preview real
yep.
quick?
So now let's see the actual data. So once I've saved this, then I can preview. And it's doing that query then on my account object and bringing back the table with the accounts present. So this is really nice because I've got inline edit. I can see my data, and now I can start to play with my app page.
Perfect. So you can go from a blank canvas to a working page application in a couple of minutes. And you can see here, this is showing in a visual force page, but you can go drop this into a lightning page as well. No visual force needed. We have a native lightning component, which you can use in the Lightning App Builder. Okay, great. So that's how we build a page. But maybe I'm working on something like what we're talking about today, a community or a public facing site. And I've got some pretty stringent branding requirements. I need to do a lot of styling. What are my options?
Yep. So the Design System Studio, which you'll hear referred to as the DSS, but it's the Design System Studio. This is a place where you have a centralized, like essentially a style sheet, but a centralized place where you can design and bring in all the different variables and things that you're going to want to use in your application. So for example, if I want to add a new color variant here, I can just paste in a hex code or RGBA or whatever it may be. I grabbed Pantone's color of the year for 2021, which is this illuminating yellow.
Ooh, nice.
And I'm not going to try and spell illuminating yellow on a webinar, but once I've created this variable, I can draw on any of these variables as I'm designing my components. So things like typography, so font size and font weight, letter spacing, all those kinds of things. And the application then is, as I'm designing my page. So if I go to buttons, for example, I can create multiple variants of any of these components. And then I can leverage the variables that I've created. So if I go up to my, my new item, because I didn't name it, there's my yellow, and I can change things like the border radius if I want a rounded button. And you have a ton of control without having to write CSS or HTML. So just kind of extrapolating from there is how you go about designing.
So what you're showing me here with our variables and our component variants, these are all the building blocks of our application, the design building blocks. And normally I might have to do all of this in code, or I might have to manage my exceptions with CSS where, maybe a list looks like this over here, but then when it's a related list, then I want it more compact and I have to go to a CSS style sheet. But the point is I can do all of this without ever getting into the code, which really opens up our options. And that's the why. So we've talked about the what, communities and sites and processes in those. Talked about the how, using the Skuid Composer Design System Studio. All right, what's the why here? What's the value? And it really comes down to this. When you've got these kinds of tools, you can do so much. You can have all the best theory in the world, but if you can't execute on it, then it doesn't really matter. So today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of an experience, of a user experience. And we're going to get into some of the theory of modern sales theory, smoothing the buying decision process. Like all these things, we've learned a lot of good lessons over the past number of years. Now we want to apply those, and we have the tools to do that. So because Skuid allows you to execute, you can take your time to start right, to design the right thing. And that's critical because your experience is your brand. We're going to talk about UX and brand and how they go together. Yeah, that's going to be a critical part of what we're talking today. So that's our overview, the what, the how, and the why. Kyle, really glad you're here. You want to talk to us a little bit about the concept behind the modular walls self-quoting process. You talked to me about modern sales theory, but what are some of the lessons you all learned that you wanted to bring to bear in what you were building?
Thanks for having us here today, Matt. Yeah, it's a really awesome question and a really big topic. So where to begin? I really like what you said too about the anatomy of an experience. Bede and I often talk about the idea of experience first design. Thinking first about what the user's experience is going to be, and then obviously the other thing you said, which is amazing, is the path to execution. Because everyone wants to think they're a strategist, but what's the point if you can't execute strategy or vision? So I mean, Skuid is an amazing path execution there. So on the sales theory topic, the major stakeholders in this project were myself, Bede, and our marketing manager at Modular. And obviously we believe very strongly in the idea of brand, and brand being the big umbrella which everything lives under. And marketing maybe is the guardian of the brand, and sales are the executors of those brand guidelines. They try and have this one messaging stream, this one way to communicate how we talk about our products, how we illustrate, how we demonstrate. And it's really tough to do that until you have some sort of like structured framework for everyone to live within. That when you change that framework, everyone's vernacular or the pictures or whatever the assets are update. And that's what we really sought to do with the quoting tool, to have one common playbook everyone worked from, the customer included. But what we did here, we flipped it on its head and let the customer lead the way. We always wanted to put the customer in the seat of decision maker, that they drive their experience without us controlling it. We support them through it. If you want to talk about the old idea of awareness, consideration, decision, action, and I always highlight action as the last step, because I mean, making the decision without action is kind of pointless, right? We wanted to almost allow you to do all of it. In fact, all of it in the quoting app, because obviously the last action you take, which we haven't implemented in phase 1 yet, but would be to put a deposit down. You actually be able to put a deposit down through the community as well, which obviously Salesforce Lightning would allow us to do, with many options in that regard. But let's talk about awareness, consideration, decision, right? Because if you've made I'm a big believer in, modern marketing theory often says that most people have made the decision before they even would call to the company or speak to sales. So you better make sure that you've allowed them to, just to absorb your brand, understand it, feel confident in all the things they're going to say, because when they come to sales now, you put the salesperson, the sales team into a really good position to have a really strong first conversation, which is hopefully the only conversation. There's no multiple rounds of conversations. The customer's already made their decision. They're just looking for confirmation now. They're looking for just the final details.
Let me stop you there for a second, because you're highlighting something that's really, really important when you're talking about a public-facing site or a community. If you're working in back office Salesforce, it's business software. There's kind of an understanding of what it means to work with business software. But the moment you put something out there in front of the consumer, all of a sudden the tolerances are a lot lower it takes me this many clicks to get something. So you are really trying to optimize that.
Yeah, we actually set the rule, didn't we, Bede, which was 3 clicks to the price. That was the goal. If it took more than 3 clicks, we were unhappy. And obviously we negotiated at some points, but that's still the driving north star of the project was that. And Bede did an amazing job to get that.
Well, I'd love to, can we see it? Can we see 3 clicks to a price?
Yeah, let's do it. So let's go through the 3 clicks to a price before we can go backwards and walk through the actual 3 steps that really sum up our whole convoluted business logic in those 3 steps. We won't include navigating to the page because usually you would not go to this page. You would be sent straight to the quick code calculator from various action points on the website.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Yeah, so, you know, because there's multiple ways to jump straight to the page we're about to see. You know, we give a lot of options to get here. So just to give context, what you're seeing here is actually a Lightning community with a Skuid page running through a Lightning component. So this is all standard Salesforce with Skuid running. Everything in the gray space is running through Skuid, but everything in the shell is standard Salesforce, allowing us to really keep down the work we had to put in to make this, you know, look like this, and obviously allows us to continue with the pathway of Salesforce's Experience Cloud upgrades, so we don't have to re-engineer as we go forward. So the first page obviously is a really powerful visual experience, which we can get into later about why that's important, which shows you an aspirational quality of what your home could look like. Also gives you a technical detail about what, you know, the product line you're looking at does. You know, on the first option you've got standard walls, second option you've got retaining, and the third option you've got a blended. And the third option is a very unique selling point which most people don't even know exists, but obviously now clearly articulated as soon as you get to this page.
Which,
so if you just want
to too, I don't have to sort through specs and figuring out what I want. I can actually just see it right here.
We spent hundreds of hours rendering these, so I appreciate that. Yeah, so, and you know, we really thought about how you articulate it. So obviously you can see that we've done a reverse angle here, so you can clearly understand what's going on. And Bede, if you just click on one of the pictures there, Bede's obviously put a lot of work into how these display in a Skuid pop-up window. So we've got a transparent background. It gives us it's almost like, looks a little bit like how, you know, maybe the App Exchange would look or something like that, you know, which are what Skuid allowed us to do. It's amazing. Like, it just makes you have that crisp brand experience now where, you know, this is a premium product, and if you're going to pay premium money for a premium product, you better have a premium experience right now, because why would you think the premium product would be premium if the experience right now is lacking?
So Chris talked about different components. You know, we're looking at the first step of what's called a wizard component, and then you clicked on an image. We've got an image component. And then that click drove some actions. Are you using the action framework to do that?
Bede, would you like to explain that?
Yeah, so basically with all these pictures, when you decide to click on the original one, that uses an action framework, yes, and that pops up. And then we've got our wrapper, so you can still see through the back. And then we use an action sequence when you click the second picture, to then highlight that one. And you'll notice as well, it shows you basically which one you have highlighted. We are able to also circle the one, so there's no confusion as to what exactly you're looking at.
That's great. So when we talk about optimizing clicks, you want to make each click count for a lot. And
exactly.
If you're doing this kind of stuff, normally it's going to take code, but Skuid has these actions and what we call the action framework. You can say when the user clicks on here, I want it to show a pop-up. It's got a picture. Maybe it gives them a message, but you can do all this stuff declaratively. So that's a great use case for that. You're making the clicks worth a lot as you go through.
The other cool thing is this response. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you only have so many clicks before you start to lose the customer. You don't want them to have to click through too many options and confuse them and just make them have to think too much about the whole experience. You want to make it as easy as possible for the customer to use.
The other really cool thing that's happening here is this is because of how Skuid's responsive grids that Chris showed before work, it's scaling to the desktop size. Obviously to the device if it's a mobile or an iPad. So actually this experience allows us to have consistency across different devices and different device sizes, which is also another huge win, because you don't want to exclude people on 4K screens or, older laptops, for example. There were two ones we had to think about a little bit more. So Skuid allowed us a lot of power there.
That's huge. All right, so what's the next step in the process?
So this would be an optional step. So this is still the first step. Most people wouldn't necessarily need to click that if they didn't feel like they needed more context.
Show, don't tell.
So you pick the one that's the most appropriate for your need right now. So let's just go with the standard wall. Now, because of how Skuid works, everything is now contextual. So if I had selected a different product line, I would have got different pictures, and I would have got different explanations here. I would have got different height ranges, and I would have got different context. So everything is just in time and contextual. So right now, I'm prime for understanding the friends experience. I'm a customer who's just in the awareness phase. I'm gaining awareness of what I need. So this is the perfect time to add value to that customer experience by telling them things they need to know, maybe about council regulations, which you can clearly see where we can, link to the council regulations guide, pool compliance guide, things that you don't know or think about unless someone tells you. And usually these things get told to you, just before the purchasing decision's made. It's kind of too late to avoid something that you got your heart set on. Maybe you wanted a wall that was too big for your council's, your guidelines.
Yeah, you're making me feel like a very informed decision maker as I go through these, and I don't have to go hunt for things, and it just feels kind of natural. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
So, and obviously the three things you see here are the three main experiences of the home. We have the front experience, which is something that usually leads the customer to want to, express themselves to the world or guard their property. The back experience, which is more like about how they want to entertain. This is how I want to live my life out my backyard, especially in Australia. We love our sun. Or I want to entertain, and the pool's a very similar experience, but more curated for specific times. The pool is like the backyard experience that you use probably more infrequently, but for more, more entertaining or it's more aesthetically driven. So we've kind of curated these images to touch onto that, that underneath, emotional experience that the customer is going through to help them move forward. So if we want to just select on front, obviously we've given a very aspirational, powerful experience for what the front is. And now we're 2 clicks in, and these are unfortunately the engineering questions you can't avoid. How long is the fence going to be, and how high do you want it? But we tried to make it as simple as possible, and also Skuid allowed us to, on the right there, have FAQs that, once again, right now in the experience where I could get stuck, I can watch a video on how to measure. So if you just click on that bead, that'd be a really cool example that you can just insert YouTube straight into the Skuid experience.
Right, so we've got a couple of Skuid components here. I think you're using an accordion with some sections to open up with text in there. And then, if with our text component, you can embed HTML in there. So if you're wanting to embed YouTube or other content, that's going to be a good option. Cool. And it's just right in there. That's excellent.
Yeah, and that's obviously, it looks as simple, but that's a huge game changer, particularly what's essentially a lightning component.
Yeah, excellent.
So maybe just type in 20 meters. 20 meters is always a pretty standard length for us. Obviously, this is all in metric, 60 feet maybe.
We'll do our best to convert.
And height, I guess we'll just pick maybe 1.5 at the moment, or 1.8. 1.8, 6 foot, that's a standard kind of fencing height. Obviously, it blocks a person seen over it. So now with the minimum data, all we have to do is click find pricing, and now, Bede, you can explain maybe what's happening in the background here, because it's quite a complex process that just went on there.
So for the first few processes, the customer is basically adding conditions to what they want to find. There's a whole list of records in Salesforce that represent each one of these combinations, and each time the customer goes through a step, they're limiting it to, I want a front wall, I want a wall this high, and I want I don't know, this long as well. And then basically, without them even realizing, they're limiting down to the exact records that suit what that they are after.
Yeah, and we're going to get into it later, the idea of choice paralysis, but basically
Yeah.
through, intuitive decision making, they've gone from 5,000 possibilities down to, we're going to see a handful now. And the dollar values you see here are generated in real time by Salesforce actually grabbing product bundles that it knows it would need to make the combinations. So what you're seeing here is just maxes, or these are actually, sorry, these would be the mins. So out of the combinations it found with the query, the calculations it did on those, it's just expressing us the minimum price. And it's done that by actually bundling the products in real time, right, Bede?
Yeah, exactly right. So the UI formulas let you display data straight away without having to even query the database. It can give you values straight onto the screen, and you don't need to save or requery any data from Salesforce. So these are accurate based on...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is accurate based on exactly what the customer has selected. That is the minimum that they are looking at.
Yeah. And this is also coming from a single source of truth, our product catalog that we would use in all our quoting. So updates to the product catalog will update this pricing in real time. So there's no more the pricing mismatches between different price books. This is just a true single source of truth for pricing now.
And you were talking about UI only formulas, which is something that Skuid brings, the ability to do formula fields on the client side. And that highlights just a general patterns. We want you to do things on the back end that need to be in the back end, and stuff in the front end in the client that should be in the client. So if you're just doing a calculation, it's just about displaying something, that should be a front end formula. But if it's something that actually ties into automation on the back end, then that's when you would use a Salesforce formula. So being able to do the right thing in the right place is really important. And it affects performance, it affects experience. This is really good stuff. So, okay, so you talked about choice paralysis. I'm going to see some different options based on whether or not I choose walls or fence, right?
Yeah, and just on the choice paralysis, we've made sure we have no more than a maximum of 3 choices at every step, right? That's part of our guiding force. If we took the walls and fences option out, which we did at once, sometimes you got 5 choices and it was just too many. So we pared them down based on the buying behavior of the customer, based on the customer's experience, and also based on the product fit for the requirements. So there's a whole bunch of reasons we've done this, brand capital as well. But basically you've got 2 choices which connect to the vernacular of the buyer. Walls usually being a grander, like a big pillars, and fences being a sleek modern design. And in the fence category, we're more a premium fence, but in the wall category, we're a modern alternative to traditional building materials. It's often a cheaper alternative. So it allows us to really not talk about all that stuff, but have the customer innately kind of get that. So if you just click on walls option, for example, Bede. The other cool thing, obviously, is we can highlight. We can see that the mouse went over that. We can see now the choice has been made because it's changed the color, and also the show button disappeared. And now it's showing us information which it had already queried. It already queried this. It was just held in a non-rendered state because of how Skuid allows us to render divs.
So this is fantastic, and there's so much good stuff that we could get into here. You're doing stuff with conditional images to tie into what the user expects to see based on dimensions. But I want to get into something here, because I know that when we plan stuff for our house, I can help a little bit, but honestly, my wife makes most of the decisions. So how do you manage multiple people being a part of this process?
So actually a really awesome thing you say there is that you're right. There's always multiple stakeholders, and in this instance, it's definitely going to be the 2 homeowners. So obviously we've curated this design. Going back to the design system, we asked ourselves the question of who's our primary user, what type of experience they're looking for. We're not going to label that user, husband or wife, but we're going to say the person that's doing the first, that's the one who's using it first. They're looking for a slower, more like sipping experience. Like we used to call it the sitting down and having a tea experience, right? So there's a lot of greens here. There's a lot of soft colors, because it's allowing you to linger and spend time with everything. Usually the other decision maker wants to just be given all the data and make the decision from the facts. So this is the slower experience. Bede's made a marketing cloud based email template that allows you to send all of the choices to the other decision makers, so they just get the higher level information. And often, because they're going to feel like they want to be the action taker, it allows them to take direct action from that email. So I don't know if you have a copy of that there, Bede, but as you move through to the next and final step of this journey, which allows you to understand your location-based information, like installation prices because of location, which is our secondary partner network stuff, freight costs and all that. It also would allow you to send this to the more action-based decision maker, so they get high-level summary and they can take direct action, which once again, because it's coming from Marketing Cloud, allows you to update records in Salesforce, allows you to directly connect into the internal users so that we can take instant action as soon as the customer takes action. Once again, allowing the customer to be the action taker and the driver of the process, because obviously historically what might happen is someone has to call up and say, hey, I want to ask some questions, or I want to put my order through. And that's not how it works anymore. You click the action taking in the Skuid experience or in the Marketing Cloud, and now the person that works with ModularWalls says, hey, I see your order, let me just confirm it.
Right. So the rep on ModularWalls side and the customer, they're both looking at the same thing. So you've got pricing transparency. We're using the same language to talk about it. All of the stakeholders are involved, and I wanted to briefly say what you were talking about with the Marketing Cloud highlights something that's great about Skuid. We're just sitting on top of the Salesforce platform and using the power that's under there. So by using that Marketing Cloud script to get that quote out, that's a great example of the synergy of those different products. So, all right, what's the last step in this process? Where do we go from here?
Well, let's just go through one little cool thing that Bede built, if you want to talk about it, because obviously we've got a price here, and as we'll see, the price is now specific to each wall style. Obviously the Vogue wall, and just go up to the top, sorry, Bede, and just click on the fences so you can see how that, this experience allows you to transition between product lines. Skuid makes that really simple, and obviously, once again, the design system's all keeping it unified brand-wise. But if you just want to explain to them that, all right, so we're price sensitive. Our customers are going to be very price sensitive, and they want to understand, what does that price actually mean? So each one of these categories, right, Bede, is curated to, from top to bottom, explain what makes the price up, and then culminates in a really cool Skuid feature that allows you to adapt the price if you can. So if you just want to explain that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was just going to highlight as well that this whole system is designed to educate the customer so they know exactly what they're looking at, what they're buying, because you can't have an empowered customer who's making decisions if they don't know. To explain fences and walls over the phone is impossible, but this system lets you see straight here exactly what the difference is by clicking through. So the next step is, once you select...
Hang on. Just want to go through the steps just to give a really quick highlight of how Skuid allows that. If you maybe can't go back now. That's all right. We purposely made it that you can go back once you put your postcode in. Obviously, it's all running in memory, so the back experience sometimes doesn't always allow you. It saves at various points. So anyway, let's just put a postcode in, which is like a zip code. And obviously Skuid allows us to sanitize that there too, which is really cool. So you want to just explain what happened there in the background quickly, Bede? So the Salesforce flows that run there?
Yeah, so we have an object. Basically, freight is a big part of this because freight's really expensive. People don't expect it to be as much as it is, but obviously, you're sending big packs across Australia. So the freight price is very important. The customer needs to know exactly what the price is. They don't want to see that it's 3,000 and then they need to spend another 600 on freight. So the idea was here that we have all of our freight data in Salesforce linked to postcodes. So it uses multipliers to come back and give a rough freight price based on where you live.
The other thing that B did really well at here, which has to be really highlighted, is that we did this completely codeless. There's no Apex here.
Wow.
We use Lightning Flow and a lot of Skuid Action Framework to get this to work without code. So there's no code maintenance here. If you just want to maybe just touch on that really briefly, Bede.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, so as Kyle said, this is built entirely using flows and the Skuid Action Framework and process builders. Basically, as the customer is building their choices, it's saving into the database, and then that is firing off different flows that are making sure that the data is actually saved in Salesforce. And because it's saved in Salesforce, we have a record of it, the salespeople have a record of it, the marketing team has a record of it, everyone can access it. And it just basically means that now that the customer's chosen that, we can start to show exactly the things that are relevant to them using Marketing Cloud.
Excellent. That is awesome. And again, you're showing pictures down there. I think you said those are knowledge articles.
Yeah, these are knowledge articles. So
Awesome.
if you scroll down to the testimonials, it allows us. I mean, a big part of this step is the social proof. Like usually you're like, all right, so I'm at the consideration or decision phase. What do I need to make my decision? Social proof's usually a big one. I mean, for a few of these are about our TV offerings. We have segments on Australian TV, for example, or maybe it's a renovation that looks like what you want to make your house, so you can see how it was done. The other cool thing is it allows you to put GIFs in if you want to show the freight GIF. We always get a lot of questions about why freight's so expensive, and when you see the GIF about what you're getting, it makes more sense when you have to, like I need the crane truck because obviously I don't want to hand lift that off the truck.
I'm gonna do that with the guys.
People often think they will though until they see the video, right?
Right.
I'm not even joking about that. People are like, yeah, it can't be that bad. And then the truck shows up, they can't lift it off. And then they have to pay for the truck to come back another day with the crane. It's just bad customer experience all around. So once you see this video, you really stop asking that question because it's obvious.
Well, man, that is fantastic. And I think we're coming up on time here. We could spend several more hours getting into this because there's so much good stuff here. But I think you told me y'all were able to do some rebranding to line up with some of those attitudes and the feelings that you were talking about. There's so much more that we could get into, but I want to pull us back in and wrap it up real quick. What's one or two results that you saw as a result of implementing this process using Skuid and Lightning Communities?
B, do you want to take the lead on that since you're so on the ground with this one?
Yeah, so we basically, shortly after releasing this, our residential sales team doubled their sales for that month. And not only that, they saved a lot of time because this is basically educating the customer before they get to the salespeople. They know a lot more. By the time they speak to the salespeople, they're ready to buy, or they've saved their quote for later. The salespeople aren't having to generate a quote for them and then wait a few months. The customer is able to decide exactly when they want to speak to someone.
So on that one, we wanted to highlight that at first there was concern that we had a lower lead volume, but then obviously we just realized that basically any lead we're getting was basically, an opportunity in the negotiation phase. Like that's kind of what it was talking. We just removed the lead funnel, became completely marketing owned, and the first 2/3 of the opportunity funnel became marketing owned. So the sales funnel is essentially negotiation level opportunities. Would that be fair to say, Bede? Yeah,
definitely. There was definitely a little bit of panic when those lead numbers dropped, but the lead numbers dropped and we were making more money anyway. So isn't that what you want? You want to make more money, and you don't want your salespeople to have their time taken up by people that might not necessarily purchase the product.
Man, that is fantastic, and an awesome story. That's about all we have time for. But Bede, Kyle, thank you so much. I think the takeaway using Skuid with Lightning Communities, with other tools like Knowledge, Marketing Cloud, the point is all this adds up to your brand presence. Is what Kyle was saying earlier. You're talking about articulating your brand. Your UX is your brand. So thank you guys for joining us, showing us this. I want to encourage anyone who's watching this, please go to the Skuid website, skuid.com/resources is a great place to see what's going on. We've got the Skuid Word, which is our monthly newsletter. Thank you all so much. Kyle, Bede, any last parting wisdom for us before we leave?
Well, I guess it should be said that Bede and I have been using Skuid for many years now. Probably, I think I've used it for maybe 5 or 6. And how many for you, Bede? 3 or 4? So
yeah, about 3 years.
Yeah, so we're definitely big supporters of what you guys have done. And it's really cool to see the journey into the framework it is now. So I think a lot of people that, if you're on the fence about it, please give it a shot, because I think you'll be, it really like empowers the Lightning components to be what I think Salesforce's vision of Lightning components was originally. Without that code that gets in the way, without the development cycles, it's highly recommended.
Awesome. Well,
I
Bede,
think
Kyle,
without Skuid,
what'd you say?
I was just going to say, I think without Skuid, we would still be building this. We'd be about halfway through, because it just speeds the whole process up so much.
Well, that's great to hear. And it's great to hear the stories of how it's gone. And we look forward to seeing what's coming in 2021. So we'll stay in touch. Thank you for joining us today, Chris. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Hope you all have a great year.